The log started as a habit. 612 days before the HFY delegation arrived, I had taken the quartermaster post on Kesavar Joint Transit Hub with 3 boxes of supplies, a cot, and a hand ledger I'd been keeping since my first rotation on a water reclamation detail back on Lettuce Station. The ledger was the same kind I'd always used, ruled paper, 8.5 by 11, spiral bound. I bought them in packs of 6. Nobody told me to keep it. It wasn't in the post requirements. I had never been asked to defend it, and, until the delegation arrived, no one had ever shown enough interest in it to ask why it existed. I just found that the automated systems on stations like this had a tendency to round. They rounded up, mostly, or down, whatever the sensor threshold was calibrated for. You'd get a readout that said 47 liters per cycle, and the true figure was 46.83 or 47.11 or sometimes 47.4. And on any given day, that didn't matter. Over 600 days, across 11 reclamation loops, across 4 species habitat modules with 4 different cooling tolerances, it started to matter quite a bit. The difference between a HFY heat exchange spec and a Cetra one is about 12 liters of peak load. The difference between 47.0 and 46.6 is not 12 liters, but it is something. And something, given enough time, becomes a record that tells you things the wall of screens cannot. So I wrote it down. Every day, real time, every loop. The HFY delegation arrived on a Tuesday. There were 4 of them. They were wide, dense creatures, granite gray, built low to the ground, with thick necks and arms that hung slightly forward, the way things built for heavy gravity worlds tend to carry themselves. Their uniform was dark green, very plain, with a single vertical stripe on the left shoulder that I later learned indicated audit authority. They moved slowly and deliberately, the way a very large machine moves when it has all the time it needs. The lead auditor was a HFY named Overiksen. He had a flat, squared face and small pale eyes that moved independently, taking in 2 things at once. He introduced himself, introduced the others, and told me in very precise standard that the Joint Administrative Compact had commissioned a station efficiency review and that my post had been flagged for assessment. I told him I'd been expecting it. The hub had flagged 3 redundancy reviews in 18 months, and mine had come up twice before. He asked me to describe my primary function. I told him I managed water reclamation, intake tracking, flow calibration, cycle logging, and distribution coordination across all 4 habitat modules. He asked me what I used for that. I showed him the ledger. He picked it up. He turned it over once, then opened to a random page. I watched his eyes move, one going down the columns, the other drifting toward the window. It was a HFY thing, the split attention. They were built for environments where you had to track multiple things at once, and they never quite turn it off. He set the ledger back on the desk with the particular care of someone who has decided something is fragile not because it's valuable, but because it's old. The automated flow sensors produce a continuous record, he said. They do, I said. At what intervals? Every 15 minutes, rounded to the nearest whole unit. He wrote something on his tablet. The rounding tolerance is within the operational safety margin for all 4 habitat systems. It is, I said. He wrote something else. This manual log appears to be a personal preference rather than a functional requirement. I didn't say anything. He made a note. The other 3 auditors were moving around the office with small scanning devices, cataloging equipment. One of them photographed the shelf of spare ledgers. Overiksen told me that his preliminary finding would recommend the post be reclassified as part-time auxiliary and that the manual logging requirement be formally removed as operationally redundant. He said this the way someone might announce a change in the lunch schedule. Then he thanked me for my time and left. That was on a Tuesday. On Thursday, the HFY habitat module's pressure cooling system began to degrade. I heard about it through the station's maintenance channel at around 0600. The module had flagged an instability in the tertiary cooling loop, a slow pressure variation that the automated diagnostics couldn't quite pin down. The HFY engineering team was working it. Station maintenance was assisting. It wasn't an emergency. Not yet. By midday, it was closer to an emergency. The tertiary loop's cooling function depended on a precise balance of water flow between the reclamation intake and the habitat's primary heat exchange. Too much flow, and you flooded the exchange coil. Too little, and the heat built. The variation in the loop was small, under a liter per cycle, but it had been accumulating, and the automated log showed it as 47 liters per cycle. Same as always, because 46.83 rounds up and 47.11 rounds down, and the sensor didn't know the difference. I knew the difference. I had 12 months of exact figures for that loop. Day by day, decimal by decimal. I knew what the baseline was, what the seasonal variation looked like when the outer hull ran hot in the transit hub's equatorial pass, and what a deviation of 0.4 liters per cycle would mean for a heat exchange coil calibrated to VethKai heavy gravity specs. I walked down to the engineering bay with the ledger. Overksen was there. He was standing to one side with the lead station engineer, a tall Cetra woman named Feth, and they were both looking at a wall of readout screens with the focused silence of people trying not to show that they were concerned. Two of the other auditors were also there, tablets out, observing. They had been observing the engineering team all morning, which I imagined was not improving anyone's mood. I put the ledger on the table next to them and opened it to the VethKai module section. Tertiary loop, I said. Last 4 months. The drift started in month 3. You can see the exact figures. Feth picked it up immediately. She was the kind of engineer who reads numbers the way other people read faces. Fast and without expression. She ran her finger down the column and then stopped. Point 4 under baseline, she said. 0.38. Started on the 11th. She looked at Overksen. He looked at the ledger. Then he looked at me. I didn't say anything. Feth took the ledger to the workstation and started cross-referencing. The auditors watched her. She did not appear to notice them. She found the drift inside of 10 minutes, traced it back to a microfracture in the intake coupling seal, a slow bleed, too gradual for the automated system to flag as a deviation because the sensor kept reading it as 47. The fracture had been developing for 6 weeks. It would have taken another 2 or 3 before the automated log produced a number outside the safety margin. By then, the coil would have been running at 80% of rated capacity, and nobody would have understood why. She had the coupling pulled and replaced by 1400. The loop stabilized by 1600. I went back to my office and made the day's entry in a new ledger. The old one was still downstairs. I assumed they'd return it eventually. Overksen came by the office at the end of the day. He stood in the doorway for a moment. He had that particular quality of stillness that the VethKai seem to default to when they're composing what they want to say. His other 3 auditors were not with him. He had come alone, which I noticed. The coupling failure, he said. Yes, I said. He looked at the shelf. The fresh ledger was open on the desk. The 5 spares were stacked neatly where they always were. He didn't say anything for a while. The automated system, he said finally, would not have identified the drift in time. No, I said. It reads in whole units. Another pause. The recommendation has been revised, he said. I nodded. He stood there another moment. Then he picked up a spare ledger from the shelf, turned it over in his hands, and set it back. I reviewed the full log, he said. You have been tracking all 4 modules. Since day 1, I said. He looked at the shelf again. He made a short sound. Not a word, just a sound, something his people apparently make when they've encountered a thing they don't have a category for yet. Then he left. The amended audit report came through the following morning. The post was reclassified from auxiliary to essential infrastructure. The manual logging requirement was formally written into the post description for the first time in the station's operational history. I ordered another 6 ledgers.